Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to Balaton Park Circuit. Here for race 2 of the Ferrari Challenge Shell drivers and the Ferrari Challenge 488 drivers. The Coppa Shell drivers driving the new 296 car, and of course some of the 488 cars still competing in their own separate class as well. So we're just behind the Balaton Lake in a very much a holiday area of Hungary, and the sun is shining beautifully. We've come here from Mugello to Balaton, and from here we head to Jerez, then Portimao, then La Casale, then the Nürburgring, and to Imola to round out our 7-round Ferrari Challenge Europe calendar for 2024. So as I mentioned then, the weather conditions absolutely glorious today. It hasn't been like it all week long, I can tell you. 34 degrees the track temperature. Air temperature is a really rather perfect 25 degrees. We have 49% humidity and very little wind to speak of, to be honest, just 3 kilometers per hour. And as I mentioned then, our Shell and 488 drivers that will be taken to the track. Some 18 drivers in total that will be racing, and that is one of them, Motohiko Isosaki, the Cornes Motors Shiba driver, who was Coppa Shell AM champion last year, elevated to the Coppa Shell class for this year. His lap time in qualifying, a 1:36.315, is enough to see him starting from P8 on the grid. He loves his Ferrari Challenge racing and is a terribly emotional driver, and it's great to see. And talking of emotions, Manuela Gosner then finding out that she's been elevated to the P1 position from qualifying this morning, and there you can see inside the 296 car of Manuela Gosner. I remind you that if it's a Coppa Shell driver that you're watching, they will have a yellow strip across the top of their car. And if it's a 488 driver that you're watching, they'll have a blue strip across the top of the windscreen of their Ferrari Challenge race car. The Eneco Reporter Casa Ram team of Manuela Gosner then going from pole position. There's the local hero, that is Tibor Valent, and he didn't have it all his own way in qualifying, and qualifying further down the order than he would like. It's a 5th row start because he'll be going from P5. Both Tibor Valent and Benz Valent, his son, both racing in the Ferrari Challenge, and Tibor and Benz, they're both lovely people to talk to, as I have had the opportunity to do so all weekend long, and great to see the Valent family here with all their guests and all their family and friends to support them as well. The 109 car is Michael Martin from Aranello Motors. Tina there with the laptop and the umbrella, multitasking as many people do. Talking of multitasking, one that always does it is alongside me, Nico Spalek. He's got his laptop, his phone, his iPad, and also he's writing things onto a piece of paper as well. That's a bit old school for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Welcome to the final race here at the Balaton Park Circuit for this weekend. We can see that there is one spot on the grid that is empty, and that would be the one ahead of von Skelterman. That would be the Willem van der Worm position. So haven't had any specific information whether Willem will potentially start from the pit lane or whatever the reason for that. Certainly looked like an incomplete grid from this vantage point. Not incomplete, but very much in the front row is Andreas Rizzi, who's center shot in our picture here.
Yes, and you can just you can see the cars there, and there's a big gaggle around the Tibor Valent car, and with Antonio Liuzzi, of course, driver coach to Tibor and Benz Valent, and great to see him back in the paddock again. Hadn't seen him for some years. And yes, the mix of Shell and 488 cars then that will do battle for 30 minutes plus 1 lap in the Ferrari Challenge. So Manuela Gosner going from pole position, Andreas Rizzi alongside, then it's Alexander Nussbaumer and Henry Hassid. And they're ahead of John Dillon, Thomas Gosner, Christoph Ernie, Motohiko Isosaki. We'll bring you the grid in full in due course. Meantime, we are taking a look at the Richard Mille safety car that will be leading the cars away. As always, it is a formation lap behind the safety car, and then the responsibility of the front row to control the rolling start for our Ferrari Challenge cars, as non-essential personnel are being urged to leave the track right now. And that they will do, and we will get the formation lap underway. It's around about 4 local time this afternoon here in Hungary. Wherever you are joining us around the world, hello. And you're very welcome to join us for our Coppa Shell 488 race, which will be underway very, very soon. And who is going to be victorious today? Well, we're going to find out in about 30 minutes and a lap or so. And, well, you certainly wouldn't bet against a number of drivers at the sharp end of our grid being victorious and taking the honours. But Manuel Agosta going from pole position. Yesterday, taking victory was Alexander Nussbaumer. And well, he's certainly a danger man from P3 on the grid, as is Henry Hassid from P4. So, we will see. No good making predictions, because as we've found, as Nico has predicted the weather conditions for most of the weekend, and yeah, that's been a tall order. But today, where's some wood that I can touch here? Today, the weather has been very fair to us, Nico.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that's fairly certain is that Motohiko Isozaki, Willem van der Boom, Tibor Valent from positions 8, 9, and 10, they'll all be very much eager to move forward and to do that as quickly as possible. So if you want to identify the power of the grid with activity, that might be it.
Okay, so there you can see our drone then giving us a lovely shot there across our grid of cars. And Manuela Gosner going from pole position. She drives for the Ineco Reporter Corsa Ram team, which is run by Giorgio Sonagiotto.
Ineco Reparto Corse Ram, as Ineco Ram was the first ever team who won the Ferrari Challenge in 1993. And I push a lot to come back in the Ferrari Challenge in our family racing style.
It's really like going back to family, and we know each other very well, and no, we love the Ferrari Challenge atmosphere. And we are a fantastic crew, and everyone does a brilliant job, and together we try really to have a good result for the race and for qualifying.
When you understand to drive a Ferrari, you can drive every kind of race car. For example, the 296 GT3 is the sister of the 296 Challenge. If you drive well the 296 Challenge, it's very natural to come back in the GT3.
The Ferrari Challenge is the best place really to get all the racing skills, to get the experience. It's so complex, really to have the good result and to go on this podium at the end is so difficult, and everything has to go properly.
Great to hear from the Reparto Corsa Ram team, and just one of their drivers, Manuel Agostina, Giorgio Sonagiotto there. Very good to hear from them, and there is the Manuel Agostina car going from pole position, Nico.
Yeah, and she said, you know, it's very difficult to put together a good qualifying and a good race, and she's done the first part of those two, and now she's going to focus on doing the second. We're just 1 minute away from the formation lap.
And there you can see the best of our Ferrari Challenge 488 drivers there, Fabrizio Fontana, who's had quite a debut in the Ferrari Challenge this weekend. And he's going to be certainly in the driving seat when it comes to the start of this race, and his qualifying was epic, so he'll be hoping to be able to convert that into another race win, will Fabrizio Fontana. He's driving in the 488 cars. Bear in mind they have a blue strip across the top of the windscreen, the Shell drivers with the yellow strip across the top of the windscreen. Right on cue, the Richard Mille safety car will leave the grid in 6 seconds from now. Let's see how accurate I am. Well, it wasn't a long way out, to be fair. And the cars then will use the formation lap as an opportunity to try and generate some temperature into the Pirelli tyres. And then it's going to be all systems go for 30 minutes of racing. Here comes the grid in full. Manuel Agostino going from pole position. Andreas Rizzi alongside Alexander Nussbaumer and Henry Hassi. They go from P3 and P4, with John Dillon and Thomas Gosner going from P5 and 6. Next up, we'll see row 4 and P7 and P8 with Christoph Herney and Motohiko Isasaki. Then to the next row of the grid, which is the 5th. It should be Willem van der Vorm and Tibor Valent alongside. And then to row 6, where it's von Skeltema and Ken Abe. They are P11 and P12. To the next row, which is row 7, where we find Mikael Martin and Fabrizio Fontana is the best of the 488 drivers ahead of Niels Sabranson and Tommy Lindroth. They complete row 8 and row 9 with Pino Frascaro and Alexei Komarov. That's the way the grid looks. Some 18 cars out there on track. The mix of Shell drivers driving the awesome 296 car, and then the 488 drivers who are driving the equally awesome 488 Challenge car, which served us so well for so many years. On board with the Richard Mills safety car then, so the car's then weaving from side to side. You can see Manuel Agostino weaving there, trying to generate that temperature. So too Andreas Rizzi, and Alexander Nussbaumer will be planning his strategy from P3 on the grid as to how he's going to be able to get the better of Andreas Rizzi ahead of him and Manuel Agostino, and also try and keep the likes of Henry Hassid and John Dillon behind him. Tough task, I would suggest. And, well, the two races that we've had thus far today have been absolutely brilliant, Nico. And I have to say, the narrative is set for what should be a really excellent Coppa Shell and 488 race as well.
Yes, absolutely. And especially in Coppa Shell, we have seen how competitive things are and how one driver is to the very front, and then the next time when you're just a little bit off, I don't want to say you're nowhere, but you're way down the order. So everything can happen, and anything will in the Ferrari Challenge.
Anything can happen, and it probably will. You're right. So cars form up side-by-side grid formation then. They have a chicane to do. Then the Richard Mills safety car will head off into the pit lane. It will be the responsibility of Manuel Agostino and Andreas Rizzi to control the pace of the rolling start. There you can see the Richard Mills safety car, which will now peel off into the pit lane. And as I say, that will be then given the responsibility of the race start to the two front-running drivers from qualifying, Manuel Agostino and Andreas Rizzi. So the right-hander is the final turn, and then you can see the lighting gantry right at the top of the screen. There's a number of drivers to keep your eyes on here as we're about to go racing then. Ferrari Challenge, Coppa Shell and 488 race 2 is on. Henry Hassid then right at the start of the race, absolutely determined right at the start of the race. He's alongside Manuel Agostino. And Manuel Agostino, though, is able to keep that P1 position. Andreas Rizzi dropping back down the order as Alexander Nussbaumer with a supreme start as well. He's mixing it right at the front of the pack. And while all that is going on, Manuel Agostino holding her own, Nico, and managing to hold on to that top spot as Christoph Herney and Motohiko Isasaki trade a place or two. And some paint as well, I won't bet against, as they go through the first sequence of turns. Manuel Agostino, Henry Hassid, then P1 and P2. Then there's a real scrap going on for P3, and it could be John Dillon that's up to P3. One or two drivers just picking up a bit of gravel then. And there they make their way through, and thankfully all drivers getting through the first sequence of turns relatively undaunted. But Henry Hassid with a brilliant start. He finds himself into P2 and is already beginning to chase Manuel Agostino, and it was also a brilliant start from John Dillon in my opinion. Nico up to P3 ahead of Andreas Rizzi. And wow, let's see how they shape up. And you can see John Dillon just kicking up a bit of gravel there. Manuel Agostino with all the pressure ahead of Henry Hassid and John Dillon, and then it's Andrea Rizzi and Alexander Nussbaumer, Thomas Gosner, Christoph Herney. Diving to the inside there. Just taking a look at Andrea Rizzi. It was Alexander Nussbaumer, but nothing doing. And Henry Hassid is maintaining his pressure on Manuel Agostino as we put the first lap in the book of this race 2 over this round 2 weekend for Ferrari Challenge. Manuel Agostino leading, Nico.
Yeah, Henry Hassid, however, really looked like he had the real pace and really got off to the line with an amazing speed and almost got alongside Manuela Gostner. She was just able to defend. Von Skeltema with a good start. Motohiko Isozaki, who we expected to move up, hasn't quite done the same. So he's stationary in P10. Alexander Nussbaumer actually lost the place after a good race yesterday. And John Dillon, as you identified, all the way up to P3. Really, really good start from him as well.
One or two drivers just kicking up some dust there. Fabrizio Fontana is leading in the 488 race ahead of Milsa Branson and Pino Frascaro up to P3. But there is Alexander Nussbaumer in the 136 car. As Nico said, currently running in P5. Manuela Gostner leading. She's got 5/10 advantage over Henry Hassid. As John Dillon and loses out to Andrea Rizzi and also to Alexander Nussbaumer. So they go through on John Dillon, so that's his P3 gone away for the moment, and looks like he's got Thomas Gostner and Christoph Erni for company now. Manuela Gostner and Henry Hassid have broken away a little bit here. It's a two-way fight for P1, and then you see the rest of the pack with Andreas Rizzi P3, Alexander Nussbaumer, and then John Dillon and Thomas Gostner and Christoph Erni. For the 488 drivers then is Fontana from Branson and Frascaro. There's Motohiko Isozaki, who's running in P10 at the moment, and you can see that Von Skeltema and Tibor Valint having something of a battle, which as they round there you can see Tibor Valint ahead of Von Skeltema. It's the 5 P8 to P9 as Henry Hassid is certainly not letting Manuela Gostner get away in any way, shape or form whatsoever. So those two are stuck right together. Gostner from Hassid from Rizzi. So there is Manuela Gostner, there is Henry Hassid, 4/10 between them. So Manuela Gostner leading this race. There's Christoph Erni, who's currently running in P7. And let's take a look at the start of this race then. And a great start from Henry Hassid. So as the cars cross the line then, you can see Henry Hassid diving to the middle straight away. He got a really good launch off the start. And put himself into a very, very good position. Manuela Gostner getting a good start, and Rizzi less so. And there, threading through the needle was Henry Hassid, and he tried to fly around the outside of Manuela Gostner right at the start, going into turn number 1. It's almost a hairpin turn number 1, but wasn't quite able to do it. John Dillon with a blistering start as well. And to be fair, of course, he put himself up to P3 and then lost a couple of places. But that was where Henry Hassid tried to find it around the outside, but Manuela Gostner closed the door, as is her entitlement to so do. And Alexander Nussbaumer then on the outside of Manuela Gostner, and John Dillon trying to squeeze through the middle as well. So from various different angles, you can see a replay of the start, and you can see just how lively Henry Hassid was right at the start of the race. So Manuela Gostner kept cool, calm and collected. He's able to do that and maintain that poise, if you will, because Henry Hassid is certainly keeping the pressure on. There's 5/10 between P1 and P2, and as I mentioned, those two have broken away from the rest of the pack fairly significantly as Motohiko Isozaki is on the back of Von Skeltema. Now, Motohiko Isozaki in the 105 car, currently running in P10. Bear in mind, he was the Coppa Shell AM champion last year and elevated to the Coppa Shell championship for this year. Absolutely loves his Ferrari Challenge racing, as Thomas Gostner was just taking a look at John Dillon then, and that would be for P5 in the race. Thomas Gostner's daughter, Manuela, doing a great job here, leading this race. And for the moment, Henry Hassid is not able to provoke a mistake from Manuela Gostner, who's holding her own very well indeed, and Henry Hassid will do everything he can, of course, but he's got to stay within shouting distance, and at the moment, that's precisely what he's doing, Nico.
Yeah, indeed. But one thing that he has to be aware of, and we have to remember that you can't always run for the entirety of the race right behind another car, because the heat from the car in front of you will not allow you to cool down the tires, so the tire wear will be even greater. So he has to either make a move or at some point let Manuela go a little bit to stay out of the dirty air behind her. So that is something he has to be aware of.
Very fair point. Fabrizio Fontana is leading the 488 race, and he's leading that by some 7 seconds over Nielsen Ransom, who's P2, and Pino Frascaro, who's running P3. Into turn 1 then. So Henry Hassid, is he going to listen to the advice offered by Nico in terms of not running in the dirty air behind the Manuela Gostner car and allowing the car and driver combo just to just to cool down a little bit before having another attack at Manuel Agostino. Well, we're only got the first 7 minutes of the race done, and Henry Hassid shows no signs of abating at the moment, I have to say. And of course, he will be taking a lot out of his tyres as well. And should I also mention, he has been warned 3 times about track limits, Nico.
And that means he's already effectively on red alert, because any more track limit excursions will immediately bring a 5-second penalty. So, you know, he could push and push and push and get by, and, you know, one track limit excursion and you're 5 seconds behind the game already. So he has to be really, really careful. That's a very early stage to have collected that many warnings.
I agree, and I think it's been in pursuit of trying to find a way that is the reason that has caused him to receive so many track limits violations. 3, as you say, the next one he gets is going to be punished, isn't he? So 5-second time penalty would be a disaster, because what it effectively would mean is that he's got to get past Manuel Agostino. Then he's got to build a margin of 5 seconds before he would be able to take the win, and that applies to whatever position he's in. He's got to have a 5-second margin over the next best car to guarantee him holding on to that position. Meantime, Tommy Lindroth in something of a battle there, as Tommy Lindroth is one of our Ferrari Challenge 488 drivers, and he's pushing Pino Frascaro quite hard now, because Tommy is well used to visiting the podium and would like to be back on the podium today. He's currently P4. What's preventing him with a podium place is, of course, the all-red car of Pino Frascaro, which is the car that you can see there ahead of Tommy Lindroth, chasing down as we speak. So there's Pino Frascaro, and Pino and Tommy Lindroth then having a battle for the final podium place in our 488 cars, which, of course, race alongside our 296s in the Shell Ferrari Challenge. And here Lindroth just taking a look at the inside, showing his face to the inside of the Pino Frascaro car. I don't think he's close enough to be able to do it. No, sure enough, Pino is able to turn in and rotate the car with no trouble for Tommy Lindroth. I'm just seeing that car number 167 is receiving a time penalty of 5 seconds for track limits. That is the driver that's running P2 for Kessel Racing, Nico, Henry Hassid. So where's that going to drop him? It's going to drop him certainly out of the podium places, isn't it?
Yeah, for the time being. Now, obviously, now in some way is an extra incentive to get ahead of Manuela, because as long as he is behind her, he can't stretch his legs the way that he would like to. But you know, it's not that one penalty and then that's it. If you collect more track limit warnings, you will get additional penalties, and they grow in severity.
Yes, they do. You might just see on the graphics on the left-hand side of the screen, well, there you can see the red bar, 5 seconds plus. That's what Henry Hassid is going to be awarded at the end of the race. It's a 5-second time penalty. So to go back to what I was saying, basically, if he wants to win this race, as it stands now, he's got to get by Manuel Agostino. He's then got to build a margin of at least 5 seconds over Manuel Agostino to hold on to that lead of the race. Well, there's no signs of him being able to do that currently, because Manuel Agostino has done a very, very good job in defence, and she's not yielded to the pressure from Henry Hassid at all. Been very good driving from the young, talented female racer, Manuela Agostino, ahead of Henry Hassid and Andreas Rizzi. They are the top 3. Then it's Alexander Nussbaumer, John Dillon, Thomas Gosling, Christoph Ernie, Tibor Valin, von Skeltmar and Motohiko Sasaki. They occupy the top 10 places in our Ferrari Challenge Coppa Shell race. And it's Fabrizio Fontana ahead of Niels Sebranson, and now Tommy Lindroth has managed to find his way past Pino Frascaro to pick up P3 in the 488 Challenge race. So well done to Tommy Lindroth, who's got by.
Indeed, and Fabienne Volvent, who is at the Nürburgring for the 24 hours, or 7 hours in that case, because of Fox, she is usually driver coaching Tommy, and she will be surely watching our live stream, and she will be proud of Tommy. I don't think that she can coach him from afar, but
I don't know.
Well, maybe, but she's certainly taking part in following his every move, and so well done, Tommy. But it's a long race, 18.5 minutes still remaining.
Now, much as I listen to every word that you say, and Henry Hassid clearly doesn't, because not for 1 meter has he not run in the dirty air behind Manuel Agostino. He's as consistent as he's been in staying with Manuel Agostino. Manuela, though, it's brilliant driving from her. She's not yielding to the pressure from Henry Hassid, who's got the inside line now, but he's not quite close enough. And Manuela, who's got track position, is allowed to take the line that she would like to take, and Henry Hassid has got to try and find a way by. This is Thomas Gosner, who's approaching John Dillon, and here is Tibor Valint then on the back of Christoph Herney, ahead of von Skeltermar, and then it is the Motohiko Isosaki car rounding out the top 10 at the moment. Another driver that's receiving a warning is Ken Abe in car number 170, who's running P11 at the moment. Track limits, it's turn 12 is always the place here, where track limits seems to rear its relatively unpleasant head and impact and affect some of our drivers, none more so than the driver that's running P2 on track, which is Henry Hassid. If everything stayed the way it is right now, Henry Hassid would drop down to probably P5.
Yeah, looks like it, although the gap to Alexander Nussbaum is quite narrow. So for Henry Hassid, it's kind of like two strategies. One is trying to get up the road and get past Manuela Gosner, or, you know, just let her focus on her race and just try and hope that she builds so much of a margin and he can follow in her footsteps, and which would eliminate the chance for P1, but it would give him a better chance of going up, because the more he attacks, the more she will defend, and that inevitably slows both of them down.
There is John Dillon, who's defending from Thomas Gosner. John Dillon, who was on the podium yesterday, he's running P5 at the moment. Thomas Gosner is running P6 currently, and Manuela Gosner he continues to lead this race from the pressure from Henry Hassid. I just have to say, I think Andrea Rizzi is getting a bit closer to them now. So he will try and join in this battle. Nico makes a very good point that the more these two do battle, of course, the slower they become, and that perhaps just playing into the hands a little bit of Andreas Rizzi, who's getting closer now in that P3 position. And also Alexander Nussbaum is trying to get the hurry up on as well in the second half of this race. 16 minutes plus a lap remaining for our Ferrari Challenge Coppa Shell. And bear in mind, we've got another race going on within this one as well, and that is for our 488 drivers, where it is Fabrizio Fontana from Niels Sebranson and Tommy Lindroth, the top three in the 488 Challenge race.
And Niels Sebranson also has collected 3 track limit warnings, so he's also a little bit on the edge, and he has to be careful, because getting another penalty would at least drop him behind Tommy Lindroth. And would bring Pino Fascauer back into the mix at least.
Yes, that's a very fair point. So, yeah, keep an eye on that. Well, undaunted by any of what's going on behind them is Manuela Gosner and Henry Hassid. There's John Dillon, able to defend once again from Thomas Gosner, who they are running P5 and P6. And John Dillon, who's had a good start to the year, taken a couple of podiums. He took P3 in race 1 at Mugello, and of course took P2 here yesterday. Driver of the 161 car, coached by Matt Griffin, and John, one of the regular campaigners in the Ferrari Challenge, really enjoys his racing in Ferrari Challenge. He's raced both here and in the UK as well, and for the moment he breaks away a bit from Thomas Gosler and gets himself a little bit closer to Alexander Nussbaumer. Henry Hassid gets within just within 4 tenths on Manuela Gosner now. So Henry Hassid, who has that time penalty hanging over him, is just champing at the bit, but still hasn't been able to get close enough to get an overtake opportunity on. So here is John Dillon, but there, as I said, Nico is getting ever closer and diving to the inside, and Manuela Gosner is just able to be cool and calm and carry more momentum, Nico. But Henry Hassid is really, really pushing. Is he going to have a go going into turn number 1? He's close enough to be able to do it here. Getting a little bit of a draft off of Manuela Gosner car. He dives to the inside, then thinks better of it. Has to brake really, really hard. Manuela positions the car right in the middle of the track, which is her right to do to protect her track position. And Henry Hassid, to be fair, Nico, he'll be taking a lot out of the Pirelli rubber on his car. Yeah,
and he's now on the inside, and maybe he can get by, not quite. I mean, if there is one silver lining to the penalty, it means that if push comes to shove, Manuela will certainly let him go rather than risk a collision, because she knows that even if Henry gets past, she still has 4-point-something seconds of a cushion before she's actually relegated to P2 when it comes to podium concerns and the actual race results. So, you know, he almost really has to just put him into a position where Manuela thinks better of it and allows him through. Is that an advantage? Well, maybe.
However, psychologically, Nico, if you lead in the race, you want to be first across the line, don't you? So, yes, I understand precisely what you're saying, but I'm trying to put on the mind of a racing driver, which I'm not, and I just think, you know what, I'm winning the race. I want to be first across the line, irrespective of the penalty that's going to be applied after the race. But yes, you're right. If you've got your sensible hat on, perhaps that's what you do, and as long as you maintain a gap that was no more than 5 seconds, it would be academic, wouldn't it?
Exactly, and especially that would mean that you don't have to worry about what's going on behind you. You can just focus on the car in front of you and just say, as long as I'm with that car, I'm good.
Yeah.
And we know Manuela, and we know Giorgio Giotto, who is going to be talking to her, and I think both will agree, you know, if there is any danger of a collision, better let him go. But as long as she can avoid that situation entirely, even better for her.
They are lapping within a couple of tenths of each other, and last time around, Henry Hassid was just a couple of tenths quicker. It's all very well being quicker than the car in front of you. You've got to be quicker and find a way by, and I think it's fair to say, Nico, that this track doesn't offer you acres of overtaking opportunities. You know, you've really got to pick your spot and go for it.
That's true. Although the fact that we don't have the obvious overtaking opportunity or spot has led to drivers pick different ones and be very courageous in some parts. It has worked for the most part, not always, but for the most part.
Yes, that's fair.
And maybe that is an advantage at some point. Well, there is Manuela Agosta showing her lights to one of the 488 cars running ahead of her, and that means traffic will come into play very, very soon.
Yes, it's going to be the car of Alexei Komarov, who's running P5 for Scuderia Prague Racing in the 488. Yes, I just hope that traffic doesn't form a problem for these drivers now. Generally speaking, in the Ferrari Challenge, supreme discipline for the drivers, and they do everything they can to get out of the way, but what they can't do is make a car disappear, Nico. But Alexei Komarov does as good as that as he possibly can. And now Hassid was not able to take advantage of the 488 car that Manuel Agosta was coming across, and he has to try all by his own efforts once again without any assist from a backmarking car, which isn't backmarking. It's running in P5 in the 488 race, and backmarking relative to the pace, of course, of the 296 cars, which is just an awesome Ferrari Challenge race car.
Yes, absolutely. Just to give you an update in terms of the gaps, Henry Hassid is virtually back into P3. He has made enough of a gap towards Alexander Nussbaumer.
Wow.
So he would only have to allow Andreas Rizzi pass by virtue of the penalty, but lot still to do, and you know, all it takes is like a safety car and all the gaps to be bunched up. So you know, he can't afford to make any mistakes, and he will try and get past Manuel Agosta for sure.
The irony is that as the Pirelli tyres are wearing, and no one has pushed their car harder than Henry Hassid, so therefore presumably the grip available to him is the least it's been all race long. He's not had too many penalties in the sort of middle part of this race. They all came earlier on, as we look at the Ripardo Corsa Ram racing team and Giorgio Giotto as we speak, talking to Manuel Agosta. So yeah, I find that really, really curious. You know, all his track limits violations came right at the start of the race, but I think that was as he was looking at unorthodox lines to try and get a measure of where he could overtake Manuela, probably.
Yeah, indeed. Just as you say that, he has just added a fifth warning, which for the moment doesn't do anything. He's still got a little bit in hand with 9 minutes remaining, but you know, you can see he is piling on the pressure once again. And Andreas Rizzi is doing a fair thing, you know, he's just following the two, and he's getting a little bit closer, it seems.
I think you're right, and you made the point earlier on that the more these two are battling together, it slows them down, and it just means that Andreas Rizzi can get ever closer, and that's precisely what he's doing. Well done, a good spot from you. So Gosner then, as car number 162 picks up a time penalty, and that's Christoph Herney. He's got a 5-second penalty. He's only the second driver to pick up a penalty, to be fair. There you can see confirmation of that on your screen as Henry Hassid. Well, You made mention of the fact that you can't run the car in the dirty air behind another car for too long. He's just done it for the entire race so far. I mean, we know what a quality driver Henry Hassid is. As a round has gone, Christoph Herney just received a time penalty now by Jimmy. He has pointed the car in the wrong direction. Now, whether there was an assist there or whether he did it all on his own, as Mikael Martin is about to try and get past Christoph Herney, and I rather feel that he's not going to be able to. So Christoph Herney having gone around, and here comes the race-long battle between Manuel Agostino and Henry Hassid. Let's see him replay. What happened? Well, Christoph Herney then completely on his own, just losing the back end of the car, and around he went. So that dropped him, and he'd only just picked up a 5-second time penalty. So it was real bad news for Christoph Herney. Double bubble bad news, to be fair. Right, Henry Hassid now is closer than he's been for some laps as he looks to the inside now on Manuel Agostino. Again, Manuel just positions the car perfectly from a defensive strategy in the middle of the track and denies Henry Hassid the opportunity to come around. And Nico, that is absolutely her right to do that.
That is absolutely her right, and what's very impressive, in spite of being under the pressure of Henry Hassid for the last 23 minutes, she hasn't incurred a single track limit infringement, and I think that is really, really impressive, how consistent and how unfazed she's continuing to drive. Very
creditworthy, you're absolutely right, it's a good pickup. So, Gosner from Hassid, from Andreas Rizzi. They've both picked up their pace a little bit now, and Andreas Rizzi is still trying to keep on their tails, if you will. We've got 6.5 minutes plus 1 lap remaining. This is von Skeltemar, Modeigo Isozaki, and Ken Abe. You can see here they are running P8, P9, and P10 as Henry Hassid has gone through. So we'll get a replay of that very, very quickly, I'm sure, but it had been threatened for corner after corner after corner, and you know, it's just really unfortunate as we were looking at a fight that was going on elsewhere. And here it is. Dives to the inside of Manuel Agostino. There is a touch between the two of them. I mean, he was always going to have to be bold. Manuel Agostino tries to come back, but Henry Hassid went for it. And he'd got to be absolutely committed going into that chicane. He was absolutely committed. Manuela tried to fight back. Now, do bear in mind, at this stage, Henry Hassid has got a time penalty hanging over him. We've got 5.5 minutes plus 1 lap remaining. And he has got to build a margin, Nico, of over 5 seconds.
Yeah, he's got 1 second already, but I think Manuela will be able, because she can push, she can really push. And I don't think that she has driven her Pirelli P0s to the absolute limit yet. And I struggle to believe that Henry will be able to do it, but especially with traffic ahead of him. But you never know, that can come to his assistance potentially.
Yes, it can, because if he dispatches those back-marking cars better than Manuela does, then he's going to be in a really, really good position here. And you can see Tommy Lindroth is the first of those. I think it's Tommy Lindroth. Yes, he goes by Tommy Lindroth. Next is going to be the Niels Sebranson car. So Henry Hassid is going about this task really rather robustly. Puts himself to the inside of Niels Sebranson and does go through. There was certainly a bit of panel rub in there as he was doing it. So the margin now is up to 1.496. Now this is where it's critical for Manuela. If she gets held up too much by some of the 488 drivers, this was Henry Hassid. I mean, he was utterly determined, wasn't he? Niels Sebranson had no idea he was there.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Niels Sebranson on the very topic, he received a penalty for track limits. We touched upon it early, and that actually puts Tommy Lindroth into P2 in the 488 class. And now we can see both of our front runners have gone past those 488 challenge drivers, who are front runners in their own class, obviously, but not up to the same speed as the 296 challenge affords them. And there you can see the gap, 1.7 seconds. So it's still 3.3 seconds to the good of Manuela virtually. I think Henry Hassid is also more looking at the Andreas Rizzi gap, because that's currently 4.2 seconds. And again, it's still about P2 potentially in the race for Henry Hassid.
Yeah, well, on every single meter of tarmac, Henry Hassid is showing pace and is really, really doing his level best to effectively nullify the 5-second time penalty that he has got. And right now, Nico, has he done enough to at least get a podium, hasn't he?
Well, he's certainly got enough to have a podium for the time being. He's got 8.8 seconds to Alexander Nussbaumer, who is running in P4, so that gap certainly is good enough. It's already good enough to be ahead of Andreas Rizzi, barely by 2/10. But as he is stretching his lead, I think P2 currently looks like it could go his way.
The serious face that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen is Stefano Guy, who is driver coach to this man, Fabrizio Fontana, who's leading the 488 race. This is Henry Hassid then, who is leading on track the Ferrari Challenge Coppa Shell race with 2.7 seconds to the good. Let's see what it is now as Manuel Agostina crosses the timing line. It's 3.1 seconds, Nico. Every single lap, Henry Hassid is driving like a quali lap.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's 3 more laps, so Manuela Agostina really has to push herself now, and you can see she runs a little bit wide into that turn. I mean, if Henry Hassid completes that, it would be the drive of, I don't know what time period to pick, but it would be an amazing drive. He has really got the pace.
He has. He sets a fastest lap, Nico, and bear in mind that his tyres are 28 minutes old now, and 28 hard minutes old, because he's raced so hard behind Manuel Agostina.
And the gap's 4.3 seconds. I mean, where is that pace coming from? Whatever happens, the Anico...
Oh, Manuela's got a puncture!
Oh, no!
Manuel Agostina has got a puncture. I could just see her wobbling the back end of the car. So that plays nicely into the hands, and that's where that gap has suddenly come from, Nico.
Well, in parts, for sure, but I mean, he's also stretching his legs towards the other drivers. It wasn't just against Manuel Agostina, to be fair, but Kessel Racing really has engineered an amazing car for Henry Hassid, and he's pedaling it to the absolute maximum. Tough luck for Manuel Agostina.
Oh, it is tough luck. I mean, that really is such bad luck. Henry Hassid now 5.5 seconds to the good, ahead of Andreas Rizzi, and John Dillon is on for a podium here. He's running P3, and Henry Hassid then, well, he crosses the timing line now. He'll have the remainder of this lap plus 1 more. And here comes Andreas Rizzi. Now, all of a sudden, Nico, Andreas Rizzi is in the mix here, because the gap between Henry Hassid and Andreas Rizzi is down to 4.779, so that would mean, as things stand now, Andreas Rizzi would be race winner.
Yeah, I mean, not quite sure where that came from all of a sudden, but now Andreas Rizzi really got the hurry up. This is an epic race. I mean, they're not side by side, bumper to bumper on the track, but on our timing screen, they are fighting for thousands of seconds.
And we've seen Alexander Nussbaumer into the pit lane, regrettably. Here is Henry Hassid, who needs to find 9/10 at least. And John Dillon up to P3, as I mentioned. Thomas Gostner is P4. Tibor Valin, the local driver, is P5. Well, we've had some dramatic races in the Ferrari Challenge, and as Nico says, this is one of those dramatic races as well. You have to feel for Manuela Agostina, who had driven faultlessly from the very start of the race, defending against Henry Hassid. She finds herself limping the car round and back into the pit lane, an absolute... and we had lunch with Manuela Agostina, and we were talking about so many stories involving motorsport, of how this can be beautiful but brutal at the same time, and she must feel every emotion known to man or woman.
Indeed, and Andreas Rizzi really, he is now coming up. The gap has been reduced by 1.4 seconds within the last lap or so. So Andreas Rizzi now is clearly quicker than Henry Hassid. Has all that pushing by Henry Hassid been just that bit too much? I mean, not blaming him. He did everything he could, but Andreas Rizzi now has reduced the deficit to 3.7 seconds, which, after applying the penalty, is a benefit of 1.3 seconds. And let's spare a moment for this.
You can't feel anything but a real sadness from Manuela Agostina, who did nothing wrong at all, and just unfortunate circumstance. Henry Hassid, Andreas Rizzi then. There is Henry Hassid, who undoubtedly on this final lap, Nico, has started to push a bit harder. Let's keep our eyes on the sector times. Andreas Rizzi needs to maintain his push, because if Henry Hassid can really gain some time over this final stage, but I think Andreas Rizzi has probably done enough. How can Henry Hassid set the fastest lap on lap 17 of the race, Nico? It's extraordinary.
It's absolutely extraordinary, but I think it's getting 1.4 seconds over the last sector and a half, I think, is too tall to ask, even for someone who's been like driving like a possessed demon like Henry Hassid this afternoon. It's exactly 3.5 seconds at this stage, and wow, I mean, is there another twist in this magical,
Surely
dramatic race?
Surely not. Absolutely amazing. 5-second time penalty affects this driver, Henry Hassid. Therefore, if Andreas Rizzi, as Henry Hassid takes the checkered flag, but Andreas Rizzi has done enough to take the win ahead of Henry Hassid. And John Dillon's going to be back on the podium again with P3 ahead of Thomas Gosner. Then it will be Tibor Valint and von Skeltemar taking P5 and P6. Wow, what a race. So much drama, some of it on track, a lot of it in the race control room as well. Wow, Fabrizio Fontana. Let's not lose sight of the fact that he made his debut into the Ferrari Challenge this year. And Fabrizio Fontana is going to be a winner of the 488 race. Here he comes, the driver of the 269 car. This is going to be his third win in the season so far. He's had 3 wins and a P2. It's not a bad result, is it? For the Formula Racing driver, Fabrizio Fontana then. Pushing really, really hard. And, well, what an absolutely extraordinary race. So let's see Fabrizio Fontana then as he heads towards the final chicane, and then just a couple of turns to do, and he will seal his 3rd race win of the season. 3 out of 4 race starts. And the only race he didn't win, he took P2. I mean, that is really, really superb. Here he is, Fabrizio Fontana then crosses the line and takes the win for our 488 challenge drivers ahead of Tommy Lindroth and Niels Sebranson. I'll tell you what, those drivers have worked as hard this afternoon because they've given us so much to talk about. It's been remarkable across every category of the Ferrari Challenge. It has been truly excellent racing this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. And the effort is not always visible when the driver is really cool, calm and collected within the car. It's there, but you can't always see it. I think in this race today you could see every little bit of it from all the drivers. They gave it their all, and you could see it. Wow. Andreas Rizzi, race winner. Henry Hassid, race protagonist, if I dare say so.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So Andreas Rizzi then, whose best result going into this race was he'd taken a pair of P7s. He took P7 yesterday. Oh, amazing, absolutely amazing.
I don't know if you saw it on the camera. We saw the camera. It was going. Very good.
I'm almost bereft of knowing what to say, Nico, because just so much in that race.
It's truly something to digest. Here come our podium finishers for the 488 Challenge, who also gave us a fascinating race. Yes. Fabrizio Fontana, our winner, Tommy Lindroth, Niels Sebranson, we also see on the podium. Somewhere Fabian Volkman is smiling, I'm sure.
Outside, inside, fucking hell,
Tommy. Oh, here's confirmation of the result then. Andreas Rizzi taking the win from Henry Hassid and John Dillon. Then it was Thomas Gosner, Tibor Valint, von Skeltemar, Morihiko Isasaki and Ken Abe occupying the top 8 positions ahead of Michael Martin, Christoph Herney, Alexander Nussbaumer, Manuel Gosner, Willem van der Vorm. That's the way it looked. Confirmation of the result, bringing the same for the 488 Challenge drivers as well. As their crash helmets are removed. That I can assure you is not Fabrizio Fontana. Niels Branson. There is Fabrizio Fontana being with Stefano Guy, who presents him with the number 50, which I can only assume relates to a birthday, Nico, but that's a guess on my part. But Stefano Guy is driver coach to Fabrizio Fontana. Yeah, go on, TV camera. Happy birthday to you. Well done, another race win. So, confirmation of the 488 race 2 classification. Then Fabrizio Fontana ahead of Tommy Lindroth and Niels Branson, and Pino Frascari and Alexei Komarov. So the drivers will be heading up to the podium in due course. Taking on some water before they get there, I would hope, but because there's been so much going on. We're going to hear from Andreas Rizzi in just a moment.
Andreas, congratulations for this important result for you and your team. Was a very tough race, so can you tell us more about your strategy?
Yes, actually my strategy was to start from position 3. I only realized I was in position 2 when I got in the car, and so my start was completely different than I expected it to, and I lost I think 2 positions. I was in 4th, and then somewhere I got into position 3, and from then on it was quite a lonely race because Manuela and the other car, they were fighting it out, and I was behind just doing my laps. And then I saw they had a touch, and unfortunately Manuela then, after maybe 4 more laps, lost her rear tire, and that's how I got into position 2. And then my team called me and said that the other driver has a penalty and I should try to stay within 5 seconds. And so the strategy was made for me. It wasn't planning.
Thank you.
I'm very happy.
Thank you so much, and congratulations again.
Thanks very much to Andreas Rizzi for telling it how it was from a driver's perspective. Really, really grateful to Andreas Rizzi. And as he says, it was quite a late call from the teams to tell him that he'd got to stay within 5 seconds, which is what he did, and that was great to hear from him. So let's hear now from Fabrizio Fontana, celebrating his birthday and also celebrating yet another race win.
What a weekend for you. This is a very special day because it's your birthday. So first of all, happy birthday, and then another successful for you here at Balaton Circuit. So can you tell a recap of this beautiful weekend?
Oh, it's amazing all the days, because it's totally perfect. It's changed the weather, and today the weather is very dry, hot, but it's fantastic because I'm concentrated, and the team is very, very, very fantastic. This is my birthday, and I think today I am playing in the pole position, fast lap, and win the race. Thank you.
Fabrizio, if you want, you can tell something in Italian and then I translate, okay?
Ok, grazie. Oggi è il mio compleanno, sono 50 anni e devo dire che è il modo migliore di festeggiare con un unplan, pole position, giro veloce e vincita della gara. Io volevo ringraziare tutti perché mi hanno permesso di venire qua. Effettivamente è un giorno particolare. Ringrazio la famiglia, ringrazio i supporter, ringrazio gli amici, ringrazio Stefano, ringrazio il team, ringrazio tutti quelli che mi vogliono bene.
Grazie mille.
Grazie.
Okay, now I translate what...
Fabrizio Fontana. Here are the highlights right now. Enjoy before the podiums are underway.
What a race. Truly magnificent and truly utterly entertainment. Here are some of the race statistics, and sometimes statistics just can't tell half the story of what we witnessed. I mean, this battle that was going on was so hugely entertaining. Pick out the stats that tells you more. I think you just have to rewatch the race again. And we will go up to the podium in just a few moments to celebrate those who came out on top after that magnificent race. Michele Mambelli, our masters of ceremony, already calling out the drivers. John Dillon finishing P3 had a relatively quiet race. Not so this man, Henry Hessid. And our winner, Andreas Rizzi, we heard from him.
Applause, hover claps for the winners, and on the podium the team manager CDP DNC Racing.
CDP DNC Racing representative joining us on the podium.
The trophy for the third driver on the podium, John Dillon.
And there is Niklas Nielsen.
The trophy for the second, we sit.
Awarding the trophies to our top 3 drivers and obviously also for the winning team here in Coppa Shell.
Ferrari Challenge Shell Cup and the trophy for team CDP DNC Racing. Okay, now divers, racers on the first step of this podium together. Okay, and lift
everybody
your trophy.
Moving together for the photos.
Okay.
Before then the final race
trophy, okay.
for the champagne will be on.
Perfect. Niklas, the team manager, out of the podium, and now champagne!
Here are the cars which propelled our top 3 drivers to those podium positions, and it is the Great Paul Nottingham 296 Challenge. Kessel Racing, Henry Hessid. Second place. And here's our winner, CDP DNC Racing, Andreas Rizzi.
So podium celebrations for Shell drivers done and dusted. Up next, it's going to be the podium celebrations for our 488 drivers, where we'll be seeing Niels Branson, Tommy Lindroth, and Fabrizio Fontana. There's Niels Branson. Here comes Tommy Lindroth. Always looks very determined as he heads towards his step on the podium. And Fabrizio Fontana celebrating his birthday as well.
National anthem. Claps, and on the podium, Team Formula Racing.
So Formula Racing, of course, will be part of the podium celebrations because they'll pick up the Coppa Team trophy.
Presented by Niklas Nielsen.
And Ferrari factory driver Niklas Nielsen then making the trophy presentations, first of all, to Niels Branson. And here comes Tommy Lindroth to receive his.
And the fourth winner.
Fabrizio Fontana then. It's a P1, a P2, a P1 and a P1 in his racing career with the Ferrari Challenge so far. That ain't a bad result.
Formula Racing.
Formula Racing receiving their
Please,
trophy
drivers
as well.
Together.
And of course,
Okay.
there is
And the trophy,
a Pirelli trophy to be awarded.
Lidia Mariani, Pirelli Motorsport Commercial Manager.
And,
another trophy for
There we
the
have
winner.
it. The Pirelli trophy awarded as well.
Photos and pictures from Balaton circuit. Okay. And Lydia
Good smiles.
and
Who's going to be
Nicholas
first with the
out of
champagne? It's
pole
got to
to
be
man-
Fabrizio.
to
Surely it's his
manager
birthday as well.
And
But he has
now
got
the
2
show
trophies.
is not over without champagne.
Tommy is making his way from the podium. Oh, great stuff. The top 3 then, Niels Branson being engineered by Formula Racing. P2 for Gome Motorsport Baron Racing Team, Tommy Lindroth. And P1 for Formula Racing and Fabrizio Fontana. We'll take a look at the Drivers' Championship in the Ferrari 488 Challenge category. And it's going to be Fabrizio at the top. The Coppa Shell Drivers' Championship, first of all, forgive me. Henry Hassid, who's leading that by 11 points over John Dillon, who's now P2 in the Drivers' Championship. And Tibor Valint is P3 ahead of Alexander Nussbaumer, Andreas Rizzi, James Weiland, Thomas Gosner, and Manuela Gosner. Then it's von Skeltermar, Willem van der Voort, Motohiko Isasaki, Christoph Herney, Ken Abe, Pierluigi Alessandri, and Michael Martin then. So then we will look at the 488 Drivers' Championship. As I say, Fabrizio Fontana leading with a 24 gap margin over Tommy Lindroth, P2 in the Drivers' Championship. Then it's Pino Frascaro ahead of Christian Kinch, Niels Branson, Alexei Komarov, Andreas Berg Sorensen, Ivan David, and then it's Vincenzo Gabino and Germana Salernitano. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from what has been an epic weekend here at the Balaton Park Circuit. So there we have it then. What has been a fantastic weekend at the Balaton Park Circuit for the Ferrari Challenge, which has come to Hungary. We look forward to seeing you at the next round of this epic racing series. Bye-bye for now.